this hands-on workshop in pediatric urodynamics. At the outset, I must congratulate Dr. Pave, Dr. Sedita, Dr. Sudipta for taking on the responsibility of doing it, because as you will see as the day goes on, this is a difficult workshop to conduct. Primarily because, let me be very honest, urodynamics is boring. And to do a workshop on that is difficult. So unless you are keenly committed to urodynamics, or you recognize the value of what it is going to do in your practice, you wouldn't want to do something like this. So basically, what our aim of this hands-on workshop is, before we start, let me ask you a few questions. How many of you are currently, you have access to a urodynamic machine? Just give us a rough idea, how many of you have access? So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, around 20. I think Senita and Pave and Sudipta are not considered. So it's about, let's say about 17 people have access to a urodynamic machine. Those who do not have access to a urodynamic machine, what are you doing if you want urodynamics? Do you think it's important to do urodynamics, or do you just decide, suppose somebody needs an augment, you say, no, the bladder looks neurogenic, let me augment. How many of you would actually ask for urodynamics before you enter, say, a bladder neck sling or an augment or something like that? In which case, so that's roughly about 10. How many of you would actually refer it to somebody else to do urodynamics? Okay. Almost the entire. So fundamentally, what we are understanding from this workshop, the need for this workshop is, in pediatric urology, we're going to have a lot of conditions where we need to understand lower urinary tract function. That's all. Either in terms of manipulating the lower urinary tract, either in terms of urotherapy, or pharmacological treatment, or surgery. That's all. There are only 3 things that we need to do. Or with a view to protecting the upper tracts. When you come to children with PUV, or particularly PUV who are end-stage renal disease who are going in for a transplant, or in order to prevent transplant in these children. So fundamentally, there is a need for urodynamics. Now, the important point of knowing the principles of urodynamics is not that you have to buy a urodynamic machine and do it yourself, but you must be able to intelligently interpret the results that somebody gives you. And for that, you must have some knowledge of what urodynamics is all about. So when you finish the workshop today, not only will you know how to do it, we'll give you a thorough hands-on picture of both non-invasive and invasive urodynamics. At the same time, you'll be able to interpret any urodynamic tracing that comes to you with absolute confidence. You will also know what to do before you start to do urodynamics. So that will be the sort of introduction with which we will start. So basically, urodynamics is a study of the pressure-volume relationship in the bladder. Why do you do urodynamics? It is to provide a pathophysiological explanation for the patient's complaints, and also to identify those children who are at risk for upper tract degeneration if no intervention is done. So these are fundamental concepts. When should you ask for a urodynamic study in a child? Now, this I find a lot of people are very fuzzy about. The first thing that I would specifically like you people to know is, please ask a very specific question before you come to urodynamics. Do not think of urodynamics as a panacea for the problem you are having in managing the child. If you don't know how to manage the child, urodynamics is not going to help you. If you ask a specific question, urodynamics will give you a specific answer, and that is how you must get into urodynamics. Very important. Time and again, I am seeing referrals from people saying, child with PUV, wetting, please do your video urodynamic study. Not going to give you an answer. You must have a specific idea. You must have worked up the child sufficiently well, focus on one particular area, ask a specific question, and you will get a very good answer if you do a proper urodynamics. When the results of the test will alter management, for instance, if you want to institute CIC, or you want to change a drug or stop a drug, should I be stopping Propan? I've been giving oxybutynin for a long time. Urodynamics is important. When major surgical intervention is being contemplated, before you even think of doing an augmentation cystoplasty or a Drofanov, have a basic idea on what you're going through. Because if you don't do it, the value of what you do will be lost later on. Then a pre-transplant evaluation. What usually happens is, wherever you have a close contact with a nephrologist, which you will if you do pediatric urology, the moment they see you coming out with sensible ideas of management, immediately their chronic renal failure children will come to you. They will say, can you work with this child and tell us whether it is fit for transplant? And that's a major responsibility. Do not underestimate the pre-transplant evaluation that you do in any child. So the preliminaries that you must have before you do urodynamics are, you must have an ultrasound with post-wide estimates, very important. You must have a VCUG to document PUR. Morning, sir. Sorry, we just started, a few slides we started. A DMSA to look at renal scarring and a bladder diary in dysfunctional voiders. You will find that this concept will be reiterated, pounded by almost everyone, all the faculty in this meeting. Particularly Ramesh Babu is very fond of constantly telling you about the importance of bladder diary. Because please remember, whenever somebody refers a child to you for urodynamics, and that's going to happen to you, the moment you start doing urodynamics, people are going to say, boss, can you just look at this child and give me a plan of management? So you will have to give a plan of management. And don't expect, again I'm reiterating to you, don't expect a urodynamic study to clarify muddled clinical thinking. It will never do that. Always non-invasive studies before invasive studies. Whenever somebody comes to you, non-invasive first. Invasive urodynamics. There are any number of pediatric urologists in the United States who don't do invasive urodynamics at all. For invasive urodynamics, they would refer to some other center. But everyone does non-invasive studies, which means the first thing you need to do when you set up a practice is have a uroflow with you. Please have a uroflow with you, have ready access to a uroflow, have access to some way in which you can look at post-wide residual. Extremely important. It should be an extension of your clinical setup. Okay? So, filling phase studies are basically done whenever there are serious issues, and the serious issues that you have are PUV, urogenic bladder, non-urogenic bladder. Remember, our PUV burden is very high. We are going to time and again see a PUV child, and it's our responsibility in PUV to ensure that the child has adequate renal reserve when they enter puberty and beyond. It's our responsibility because they come to us antenatally for counseling. People underestimate. They come to you for antenatally for counseling. The unasked question that they have in mind is, I'm trusting you to have this child. Will this child be alright? Therefore, it's our sacred responsibility to make sure that the PUV child is alright. Voiding phase studies are done in dysfunctional voiders, in detrusor sphincter dyssynergia, and in detrusor sphincter dyssynergia in myelodysplasia. What age for urodynamics? Any age, even neonates. But fundamentally, doing urodynamics in children who are not at toilet trained or at a very early age really doesn't give you too much value because the bladder is constantly undergoing change. Essentially, what we do is in children who are older than 5 years or 7 years who cooperate, inform sensation and void on command. You will see today Dr. Pave has got so many children ready for surgery today, and you'll see how difficult it is to get them, to coax them to have a urodynamic study because it's an invasive study. Anesthesia is undesirable as it initiates the study. There is no doubt about that. Okay, there is no doubt about that. But having said that, time and again we have a need for either sedating the child or to give some form of anesthesia in order to get the child onto the table, particularly for a video urodynamic study. So we give IV or oral sedation for urethral catheterization. When the baby wakes up, we start the study. Very commonly in a lot of centers, they would insert an SPC in the OT, shift to the UDS room during recovery for the study. Remember, whenever you employ any form of sedation, whether it's procedural sedation or it's some form of anesthesia, please remember, you must be prepared for the consequences. The UDS room should have a pulse oximeter. The child can be very restless, drowsy, non-cooperative. Between putting an SPC in the theater and starting the urodynamic study, you should at least 5 to 6 hours should elapse. This is the ICCS recommendation. It may not always be feasible. We will be using this term ICCS constantly. There are 4 papers that we have given you, which I just want you to read, of which the most boring is the ICCS document. And there are 2 documents of that kind. But please remember, at least once you have to read it before you start doing urodynamic studies, so you'll get some sort of clarity in your mind as to what the various terms mean, what to do and how to go about. If you are interested in further literature on various subjects, please write to me and I'll give you as many papers as you want. So how exactly, if you employ anesthesia, how exactly would you do it? The anesthetists we have with us are basically clueless on how to employ anesthesia for UDS. It is you who have to tell them. It has to be a spontaneously breathing patient with no airway obstruction. Avoid spinal anesthesia because detrusor contraction will be avoided. Avoid anticholinergic drugs like atropine and glycopyrrolate. We'll go into it a little more. Atropine acts at all levels of the muscarinic receptors. Okay, M1, M2, M3. And that will really abolish whatever response you can get from the detrusor. Both total intravenous anesthesia and volatile agents are equally effective. They do not affect bladder dynamics during filling. What I have found out is, when you employ anesthesia during a urodynamic study, if you follow these principles, the filling phase of your study, as you're filling, the way the bladder responds, the way the flux happens, all that is perfect. Absolutely all right. The moment you want to do voiding study, that's when you're in trouble. When the baby gets up, the baby is not cooperative, the baby is not in the mood to cooperate with voiding. Therefore, I personally feel, if you employ anesthesia, use it for a filling phase study. When you want to know in a urogenic bladder, what is the volume at which reflux is happening on the right side? What is the volume at which reflux is happening on the left side? When can I see a diverticulum popping up? As the bladder is filling, is there an overactive contraction? Can I suddenly see the posterior urethra coming up? Can I see some leak? If leak is happening, at what pressure is it happening? All that anesthesia is perfectly alright. Nothing will happen to you. The moment you come to voiding studies, then it is good to do either a formal study in an awake child or to do a uroflow. Okay? So the bare essentials that you need as far as urodynamics is concerned, this is something we will go through with you repeatedly, is to have a bladder catheter, is to have a rectal catheter. Please remember the detrusor pressure is a mathematical subtraction of the P-Ves, the P abdomen from the P-Ves, and you get a P-net value. That is what we are relying on in whatever we are going to do. We use external transducers. We don't do internal transducers with the catheters because they're very expensive, and you have to have a different way of handling them. We don't do that. We need a pump in order to fill the bladder at a predefined rate, and a uroflow machine to assist voiding. So this is the bare essentials that you need as far as urodynamics is concerned. So when you do urodynamics, what is it you're looking at? What exactly am I trying to get into the study? I am asking myself, is the bladder relaxed during storage? So I do what's called a cystometrogram. Is there a detrusor overactivity? Is the bladder compliant? As I put more and more volume into the bladder, are the pressures lying at the baseline? This is the question I ask myself. Is the urethra closed during storage? In other words, if there is a leak, I want to know when the leak is happening, whether the pressure is rising when leak is happening. Does the bladder contract adequately during voiding? Is emptying complete? In other words, I'm asking myself, what sort of pressure does this bladder generate? It makes a lot of sense in theory. If you go on giving anticholinergics, they go into detrusor myogenic failure. They will be unable to generate a voiding contraction. They will also present with wetting, which will be an overflow incontinence. So here it is myogenic failure, which means I need to know what is the pressure that the detrusor is able to generate. I need to know whether emptying is complete. If I need to know whether emptying is complete, I can use ultrasound. I can use a catheter to empty the contents of the bladder, and I can assess. Then, if I need to know what type of voiding is this child doing, is it a synergistic voiding? Synergistic voiding means when the detrusor is contracting, the sphincter should relax. That's synergistic voiding. That all of us do. Is that happening as far as my child is concerned? This is what you have to ask yourself. So the types of studies that we do is, if you're interested only in the filling phase, you would do a cystometrogram, which is a filling phase study. If you're interested in a filling and voiding phase, you would do what's called a pressure flow study. It's there in the drop-down menu on your urodynamic machine. It is there. If you want to also know when reflux is happening, at what pressure, at what volume, you need a video urodynamic study. If you want to challenge the bladder, let us say, Sudipta is saying, I'm going to put a bladder neck sling because this child is leaking. Then you do what is called provocative urodynamics. You occlude the bladder neck with a Foley balloon and see how the bladder responds. You'll be surprised how many of them which look so weak when you fill them, become rogue bladders the moment you occlude them. So that's a dangerous bladder to put a sling around. So that's called provocative urodynamics. And finally, Euroflow and Euroflow EMG are voiding phase studies, which we will show you. So have a good team. I think Pave is blessed because she's got an excellent team. So you must have a good team. It doesn't matter what level of education they have. This is a nurse, auxiliary nurse midwife, and she's a physician assistant. But let's teach them the basics, teach them the preliminaries, how to put the lines, how to calibrate, how to set zero. All this we will show you. They will help you with catheter insertion. They will help you with monitoring leaks. They will engage the patient with the parent during the study. They will prepare the catheters, sterilize them, get them ready for the next study, which also is important because it's a bloody mess when you finish the study. Somebody has to clean everything, get it ready again the next time. They will collate the results and store the information for you. So this is what the team will do. So it's important to have a good team. And Pave has got some very good ideas on how to get a good team. I will ask her to talk to you on that. Don't worry about a separate room. In Apollo, a room costs money. Everything costs money. So you have to be very careful before you ask management for anything. So don't ask them, fundamentally. If in your room you can have a toilet and you can also have a video projection, perfectly alright. They are not bothered. So our consulting room doubles up as a urodynamic suite. So we don't care. So what we do is the same couch that I use for patient examination, I use for urodynamics also. I'm not bothered. All my filling phase studies I do here. I've got a Euroflow commode here, so anybody who comes with dysfunctional voiding systems, problems, I put the screen across here, the team gets ready, they do a Euroflow while I'm seeing the next patient. Not a problem at all. And they take them across, look at the post-void residue. So even within a very limited space, you can have it. If you have a proper urodynamic suite with a chair that can go up and down, fantastic. Go for it. But if you don't have it, this is good enough. You can do a lot of work with this. Most important, I feel, more than that is your proximity to the ultrasound room. Just looking at post-void residue. Children do not like to be catheterized to measure post-void residue. Therefore, you can have an ultrasound room, a good ultrasoundologist. If there is anyone in the hospital with whom you cannot fight, it's the radiologist. If you are planning to do pediatric urology, never fight with the radiologist because your life will be miserable. You are dependent on them all the time. Okay? So if you have proximity to an ultrasound room, within 2 minutes, you just tell them, boss, I'm going to start the study. I might interrupt you for a post-void residue. He says, fine. When he is ready, he tells the existing patient to get down, looks at the post-void, looks at the upper tracts, and your report is ready. So we do this half a dozen times every day. There are so many ultrasound bladder scanners that are available. Unfortunately, bladder scanners come under the PNDT Act. You cannot have a bladder scanner unless it's registered in the name of the radiologist. You can have a bladder scanner in your room, but it's registered in the name of the radiologist. You cannot use bladder scanner in a very obese child, and most of our children today are obese. If you have had lower abdominal surgery or if you have ascites, you can't use a bladder scanner. So you're very dependent on the radiologist. So in conclusion, the first question you have to ask yourself is, what is the clinical question I want answered in this child? To answer the clinical question, which UDS study should I do to answer the clinical question? Is there a properly trained clinician able to do and interpret the results? Please remember, UDS is operated differently. Any number of papers coming out from Western centers, they are all questionable because in none of them is a properly trained clinician standing there watching the study as it is being done, which all of us do here. Primarily because the presence of the operator changes the way the study is being done. You can manipulate the study as it goes on. You can get your desired information. In most of the Western world, that doesn't happen. Somebody does that, the reports are put in your box, you look at it and you make a major decision based on it. Can the results be reproduced? Because if you do a bad study, it can not only be misleading, it can be potentially harmful also. Please remember, you do get an infection rate, and don't forget the discomfort and the cost of invasive UDS. So before you do UDS, please keep this in mind. I hope this serves as an introduction for you, and we will carry on with the next phase of our workshop. So morning everyone, and welcome to this hands-on workshop in pediatric urodynamics. At the outset, I must congratulate Dr. Pave, Dr. Setita, Dr. Sudhir, because as you will see as the day goes on, this is a difficult workshop to conduct. Primarily because, let me be very honest, urodynamics is boring. And to do a workshop on that is difficult. So unless you are keenly committed to urodynamics, or you recognize the value of what it is going to do in your practice, you wouldn't want to do something like this. So basically, what our aim of this hands-on workshop is, before we start, let me ask you a few questions. How many of you are currently, you have access to a urodynamic machine? Just give us a rough idea. How many of you have access? So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, around 20. I think Senita and Pave, Sudipta are not considered. So it's about, let's say about 17 people have access to a urodynamic machine. Those who do not have access to a urodynamic machine, what are you doing if you want urodynamics? Do you think it's important to do urodynamics, or do you just decide, suppose somebody needs an augment, you say, no, the bladder looks neurogenic, let me augment. How many of you would actually ask for urodynamics before you enter, say, a bladder neck sling or an augment or something like that? In which case? So that's roughly about 10. How many of you would actually refer it to somebody else to do urodynamics? Okay. Almost the entire. So fundamentally, what we are understanding from this workshop, the need for this workshop is, in pediatric urology, we're going to have a lot of conditions where we need to understand lower urinary tract function. That's all. Either in terms of manipulating the lower urinary tract, either in terms of urotherapy, or pharmacological treatment, or surgery. That's all. There are only 3 things that we need to do. Or with a view to protecting the upper tracts. When you come to children with PUV, or particularly PUV who are end-stage renal disease, who are going in for a transplant, or in order to prevent transplant in these children. So fundamentally, there is a need for urodynamics. Now, the important point of knowing the principles of urodynamics is not that you have to buy a urodynamic machine and do it yourself, but you must be able to intelligently